The main topic for today's video is trying to figure out when Nio stock will be profitable. We have previously done this exercise, but the problem has always been that Nio's business model is changing over time and it's very difficult to predict how it will look like, a year or two in the future. So currently starting with our latest earnings, which was Q4 of 2024, we can try to extrapolate based on the number of deliveries when they will be break even and starting to make money. Obviously, Q1 of 2025 will be a really bad number since the deliveries was very low, 42,000, which is down substantially compared to the deliveries in Q4. In fact, 43% down quarter over quarter. But starting from Q2, we would hope that Nio will start to deliver good numbers. In fact, in April, they delivered 23,900 cars. And if they continue to deliver on that same path, they are very close to 80,000 cars, potentially even beating the 80,000 target. If they do, we might start to look at my estimations that 100,000 or 110,000 for Q3 and Q4 of this year are quite low. Maybe we should have looked at the, let's say 130,000 in best case scenario for Q3 and Q4 of this year. But anyways, looking at my numbers, you can see that one of the big problems for this is that Nio's gross profit, like if you look at the gross margin going all the way from Q4 of last year through, let's say, Q4 of 2027, according to my model, they will scale up and they will have wilds up and downs. But I would say that my target currently is around 17 to 18% gross margin by end of 2027. Now, how will that translate into, for example, when you consider the total revenue, the cost of sales and operating expenditure? There you can see that roughly in 2027, by end of the year, they will start to make essentially break even at these kind of levels at deliveries of 200,000 to 220,000, I would say. But it could also be a case that I'm a little bit too conservative right now. It's potential that break even, I mean, some of the people on Twitter and X are talking about maybe break even at around 150 to 170,000. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. But currently, knowing what the management has been doing over the past 3 or 4 years, I'm a little bit more conservative. So my target is probably closer to 200,000 deliveries per quarter before Nio makes break even. And what would that mean? Well, that would mean monthly delivery numbers for Nio at around 60 to 70,000 a month, and that's a tall order. Currently, year to date in 2025, they delivered 65,996, which is essentially half of the numbers that Xpeng has delivered at 129,000 deliveries. Again, we know that Xpeng delivers cheaper cars. They don't have these super luxury cars like Nio has. In fact, you can see here that Nio in April, they managed to sell 835 Nio 89s, which is like super luxury level car, competing against BMW 7 Series and obviously Mercedes S-Class. It's still a good number to see that they managed in the first full month to sell this many cars, beating everyone other than Mercedes S-Class. But again, let's wait and see. Previously, we've also seen, multiple Nio cars, both from the Onvo brand, but as well the main brand, starting very strong out of the gate, first couple of months, and then completely collapsing in sales. So it's difficult to have high expectations for continuation of this kind of rate of sales. Maybe, some people might expect like a couple of thousand sales of 89s. I don't know. Let's wait and see. Going back to the delivery numbers and some other, great things that are happening, we can see that the lithium carbonate price is still going down. I mean, we are essentially at 3 or 4 years lows after the peak of 2022 and 2023. We are now essentially back to where it's been at the lowest over the past 5 years. This will definitely improve the margins of these companies, every single one. But then looking also at the competitive landscape. So in fact, look at the weekly insurance registration numbers, right? And on this graph, I tried to compile Nio and Xpeng combined against Tesla for all of the weeks of 2025 in the Chinese market. So this is excluding, this is not the global sales. These are exclusively only Chinese sales. Again, Nio and Xpeng in white are outselling Tesla essentially every single week, other than late February to late March. So there was a period of 4 or 5 weeks in February and March where Tesla outsold Nio and Xpeng. But for the, let's say, 60 to 65% of the year, Nio and Xpeng has outsold Tesla. This also does not include the likes of, Zeekr, Li Auto, BYD. I mean, in fact, if you look at, let's say if you include the likes of BYD, this is the updated 2025 expected sales. We can see that in terms of millions and hundreds of thousands, Li Auto being in the orange, Xpeng being in the light blue, Nio being in the darker blue. Then we have BYD in the light green and Tesla in the dark green. So 5 years ago in 2025, in terms of electric vehicle sales, Tesla was, the market leader by far, having, over 70% of the market share. In fact, you can see here. But as the years has gone on, year by year, you can see that their market share is going down. But still, you could say that, the trend with Tesla was up until 2023 that sure, they are losing market share. It's unrealistic for them to have that kind of market share. But they are still increasing their sales. I mean, they went from 500,000 in 20 and essentially increased it by 80 or something percent to 940,000 in 21. Then again increased it to 1.3 million in 22 and 1.8 million in 23. But the problem is that 2024, they had the first regression over, many years now. And also previous target, I think for a lot of people was 2 million or so, a slight increase of 2024 numbers and essentially stagnation compared to 2023, more or less, right? That was roughly the target. But since then, due to the Elon Musk involvement in politics, I think his sales, Tesla sales has tanked in Europe especially, but also to some degree in United States, and they are still losing market share in China. So now the updated target, some people are talking, less than 1.5 million. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but they're probably not going to beat even 2024 numbers, which means that for the second year in a row, not only are they increasing, they are actually decreasing their sales. So Tesla is, in my opinion, a pretty difficult situation right now. BYD is just, going from clarity to clarity. And then you have Xpeng and Nio. I mean, they're getting to the kind of numbers if they come in at these expected 450,000 for Xpeng and 375,000. Again, look at the previous target. I had Xpeng and Nio kind of reversed. Nio supposed to have higher numbers, but now I think looking especially after the deliveries, you cannot deny that Xpeng has had double the deliveries in the first 4 months of the year compared to Nio. So I would say that currently, as things look right now, Xpeng should outsell Nio. But again, Xpeng is selling cheaper cars, so that's not a surprise, to be honest. But then again, this table doesn't include the likes of, Zeekr, the likes of Lincoln Company, the likes of Xiaomi and the Huawei cars. So it's a lot of brands that are not shown. I would say at some point we will see consolidation. The companies that are not gonna survive, the ones that don't have the gross margin to survive, is gonna be consolidated into the other more financially sound companies. I would say that the likes of Xpeng is looking great currently. I mean, their sales is going up and they are moving to profitability faster than Nio. And this is the reason why Xpeng has gone from $6 over the 52-week range to almost 27 and currently sits at 21. Whereas Nio has been, stuck in this low range between $3 to $4 over the past years with a high of $7, which is still far below the all-time highs. There's also the issue that Nio continues to expand the number of shares outstanding. They have gone from 2020 at 1.4 million shares to 2.05 billion shares in just 4 or 5 years. So the shares, there's some dilution going on obviously at Nio. The cash position starting to look a little bit difficult, I would say. Every time they started to look difficult for Nio, look at the cash position situation here on row 38. They raised cash somehow from, Abu Dhabi and Dubai or whatever it was. But I would say there's only a few times you can do that. Now, since the market cap is so low currently and the amount of dilution already been so much, I would say that it's not a sustainable way. They might do this trick 1 time or 2 times more, but that's going to completely destroy the shareholders yet again. So Nio has a knife to their throats, in my opinion, in terms of financial stability. They need to start to look at their cost. I mean, and one big problem for Nio is that, the R&D budget is not going to go down. They have 3 brands now. They have Nio, they have Onboard, and they have Firefly, right? Then they have the swap infrastructure that no one else has. So that's going to cost a lot of R&D. Then you have the sales, the SG&A. And we have previously seen that no matter what Nio does, no matter how many models they have, the only way for them to sell cars is to increase their SG&A budget. So I just don't see how the operating expenses for Nio is going to go down. In fact, I only see them going up, and at best case, like slow the pace of increase, but still going up. Then we know that the sales, the revenue, and number of cars sold is in a market where there's huge competition, so many competitors out there. I would say that the average sales price of the cars will continue to go down, especially since more and more of the sales is going to come from Onvo and also Firefly, which are cheaper than the classical Nio brand. So there's actually like the math doesn't just math up, in my opinion. And the only way I see them like making break even at the current stage is with huge vehicle delivery numbers. Like, I mean, obscene numbers of like 150 to 200,000 per quarter, like 50 to 60 to maybe 80,000 deliveries a month. Is that possible? I would say in best case scenario, I can see Nio do like between 35 to 45,000 deliveries a month at the end of this year. How do I arrive at those numbers? Well, let's have a look at the monthly deliveries. I mean, this is my expectations for this year. The gray bars are 2025. They currently had their best month in the year, and they had like 24,000 in April. I do see them that increasing that number in May to, let's say, 32,000, potentially in June to 34,000. I'm foreseeing like a kind of development like last year. The blue bars was 2024. Once they increased, from the low Q1 numbers, they stabilize at around 20,000. My hope now is that they will stabilize around the low 30s to high 30s for the most of the year, and having the record sales by, November and December. I would say that is probably possible. But again, look at those numbers. Even in best case scenario, 40,000, maybe 45,000 if I increase it, they're still at the pace of, let's say, 140 to 150,000 deliveries by end of this year if everything goes right. I mean, I cannot see them making break even at 150,000 deliveries. Even if I updated my model to be slightly less conservative, I just don't see, because look at my numbers again. The average sales price think about it this way. If they sell 150,000 cars, they're not going to sell 150,000 from pure Nio Classic, right? Which means that the ASP should potentially go down substantially, right? We can see that at 150,000 deliveries, the ASP at 28,700 would be quite a lot less than average sales price of the Q4 of 2024, which was the last earnings, and that one was at 32,000. If that's realistic, I would say so, because if they double their sales from 74,000 to 150,000 number of cars, the average sales price will go down maybe 3 or 4,000 US dollar due to the more and more of the volume being Onvo brand, which is cheaper, and Firefly, which is even cheaper. That means that even if the sales, even if the delivery doubles, the revenue shouldn't necessarily double. And although the net loss would decrease substantially, from the 800 to 900 million or so a quarter to closer to 200 million, it's still not, break even for a company that's going to sell 150,000 cars a quarter. So it's a little bit of alarming, but at the same time, if they actually manage to sell, if they manage to sell 150,000 cars by end of this year and make a net loss of less than, in worst case scenario, 300 million a quarter, that would still mean that their cash position is going to be in the, in the billions, in the, let's say, 4 to 5 billion range by end of this year. So that would kind of start to look great all of a sudden. Because then if imagine like if you have a cash burn of like 2 to 300 million a quarter, you're selling 50 to, 60,000 cars a month, and your cash position is between 4 to 5 billion US dollar. I mean, now you get a kind of sound business if you manage to even improve the efficiency even more. So I won't say that it's totally unrealistic for them to achieve this target, at least getting close to that by end of this year. But still, it's a lot of demand. Like, it's asking for a lot. So let's wait and see. But then again, to finalize the video, I would say that there's a potential path that Nio will be close to profitability. I wouldn't hope for actual profitability by end of Q4, more than, let's say, 5% chance. But in relation to, the rest of the market, again, the lithium carbonate price goes down, so the battery cost should come down. We know that ET9 seems to have a strong sales start for the first month. Although, again, let's wait and see a couple of months from now, because Nio traditionally has, strong couple of first months and then they tank in terms of sales. We have seen this kind of thing repeat time and time again. But compared to the competitors, especially Tesla, yeah, I say that Nio is in a strong position actually. I mean, they're taking market share. If you just compare Nio and Xpeng compared to Tesla, they're taking for sure market share from Tesla. So I would love to see your comments in the comment section. Will Nio be profitable by end of this year? And please help me to reach these 1,000 subscribers. Like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.